So I heard a story about a preacher who wanted to make a point and connect with his people. It's good to make connections. So he had been taught to gesture and do all these things and use vocal inflection, and so he decided he would start with the vocal inflection and see if he could really get this point across and get people energized. And so he's reading a verse from the Bible. He says, "Behold, I come quickly." Nothing. Just like this right now. Actually, thank you. That's perfect. Your response is exactly what you got. Crickets. Nothing. Zip. Flatline. So he decides, well, I guess I could gesture too. So he takes a stance. "Behold, I come quickly." Nothing. Same thing. No response. So he backs up about 15, 20 steps. He decides, I'm really just got to throw myself into this. I got to make it more dynamic. And so he runs to the front of the stage. Behold! Leaps in the air, trips over the podium, flips off the platform, lands right in this lady's lap in the front row. Shoes flying, notebooks, Bibles, bulletins in the air. People are screaming. He gets up, he helps her back. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, man. I don't know what happened there." She says, "It's all right, preacher. I should have been ready. You warned me 3 times. You was on your way."
That's a good.
So, sometimes church needs to be shaken up a little bit. People need to be unsettled a little bit. Sometimes there needs to be change and a little bit of a challenge. And I wrote a book a few years ago called The Crucified Church. And the theme of the book, in fact, it was funny because the book was initially really hard to sell. In fact, even some of the professors I had in seminary, I got a lot of great endorsements, don't get me wrong, but I had one in particular. Well, I don't think you mind if I mention, many people have heard of him, Elmer Towns, who was the founder of the church growth movement. To be fair to Dr. Towns, the first working title of the book was How to Kill Your Church God's Way. That probably wasn't the best title to use, but that was kind of what we were running with at the time, and he said, "I don't think I could put my name on that title." I said, "Oh, okay, that's fine." But the theme of the book was that the church in America is dying, and she should. And that was really tough for people to swallow at first. It was based on Galatians 2:20, where Paul says, "I'm crucified with Christ, but I live. Not I, but Christ lives in me." Right? The life I now lead, I lead through the Son of Man who gave himself for me. And my point in the book was that the church in America is struggling. She's losing 3,000 more congregations a year than she starts. Churches are closing left, right, and center. Pastors are retiring, but leaving the ministry. Pastoral couples, Karen and I are working with a few right now, where they've either broken up or about to because of stress in the relationship, brought about in part from the stress they bring home from church, to be blunt. The divorce rate, the drug abuse rate, the alcoholism rate, the child abuse rate in the church is the same statistically as the rest of the world. In some parts of the country, it's even worse than society at large. Those categories I mentioned and more. I'm not here to depress you, but the point is there are some changes that need to happen. And the change comes down to being crucified with Christ and yet living because he lives in us. And I make the point in the book that, if we can do that as individuals and if we expect new Christians to do that, how much more should the church as a whole be willing to do that? Shouldn't a whole congregation be willing to say, hey, we might like this, whatever it might be, style of music, dress code, format, a time of day we meet, the day of the week we meet. We might like this because it's what we know. But we've done some research and we found that if we change that, more people will come. And more people will hear the message. And more people will come to have a relationship with God. Shouldn't we be willing to say, as a congregation, we're crucified with Christ. Nonetheless, we live. Not we as a group, but he lives in us. And so if this is what he wants, and this is what will work to do what he's calling us to do, then so be it. I've joked about it as a pastor. If I knew and believed that standing on my head on Sunday morning, spinning around, spitting jelly beans as I preach, would bring more people to faith, I'd do it, because I don't have some liturgical thing I cling to. I really don't. And that's not to put anyone down. There's nothing wrong with liturgy. All different styles reach all different people, and that's great. And I'm not suggesting we change it just for the sake of change. But if God has put you in a place, or put your church in a place, where you're going to reach more people by changing some of that, then by all means, do it. Because you're crucified with Christ. Nonetheless, you live. Not you, but Christ lives in you.